Now it's on. And we're live.
Merry Christmas.
I thought you guys said Happy Christmas in over there. Don't you?
No.
Is that a thing? Don't British people say Happy Christmas?
No, it's Merry Christmas still. Merry Christmas all around.
I've got a couple of friends who say Happy Christmas from Britain, but maybe it's something from their region. I don't know.
Yeah. What's happening? So we're here, our friends Josh and Matthew, out in Florida. Felipe, where you at now?
Brasilia.
All right.
I'm in Brasilia. I just got back
home
from Bahia a couple of days ago.
Nice.
A couple of days ago, I've been traveling a lot lately. I'm tired. I must have driven about like 5,000 kilometers in the past month or so. So that was intense.
Man,
it's crazy. The diesel prices are crazy, right?
Yeah, that doesn't help. That doesn't help at all. It's like 560 or so.
Yeah, out here everyone's on electric cars. You know, they don't understand how come we're still using petrol and things like that. That's how far they've come. You know, it's like, you know, apparently you've got these superchargers. You know, in 20 minutes you're charged, you're ready to go. Do you know what I mean? Like if you stop
the question is, how much autonomy do you get from those cars?
They get 400 kilometers. This was, you know, in a quick chat. I was chatting to my brother and he said, you know, if you're in the motorway, you stop for a coffee, 15, 20 minutes on a supercharger, 10 pounds kind of thing, you know, and you're off for another 400 kilometers.
Not bad.
We're a few steps behind. What's that like in the US, guys? Is that happening?
Yeah, there's a lot. You see a lot of Tesla cars around, and you're starting to see more charging stations at some of the, you know, retail areas, and I think some of the parking garages have them now. But at least where we are, we're not at the head of the pack in Southwest Florida. We're kind of slightly rural, lower population area, so it's not so prevalent here.
Diesel pickup trucks and
we're in the land of the big truck. Yeah, for sure.
Still what we love.
Yeah, and if they made an electric truck that could tow, I'd be all about it, but I haven't seen one.
I haven't seen one. That's why I was asking the people here, but do they have trucks? Like, do they have big pickup trucks that are electric? Right. Probably not yet. Not even around here.
Not yet. And you know, we've adopted electric chainsaws, or at least I have. And I absolutely love my electric chainsaws. I would swap to electric on things that make sense, but that's about the only thing I've seen that makes sense for me so far.
Fantastic.
Here in Brazil, they're still very, very expensive over here, which is a pity, because things are already very expensive in Brazil, and then the electric ones are just ridiculous, because you got to buy the chainsaw, which is already more expensive, and then you've got to buy the lithium battery, which is almost the price of the chainsaw. Yeah, and then you got to buy the charger, so it's something of another world.
Yeah, the electric, the battery pack is what makes it, you know, which is what basically doubles the price, is buying the electric pack. If you got like a few tools from the same brand, you can use that same battery in several machines, and then it starts making, you know, because like I got a Makita driller. I already have two batteries from this driller. So if I was to get like a Makita chainsaw, I can use the same batteries there. Yeah. So it starts making sense once you got multiple, right, from the same manufacturer.
Yeah, you got to become a faithful to the manufacturer, right?
As well, the chainsaw, the only one that I've used is the small GTA, you know, the steel GTA, the small handgun one. Yeah. And like I said, I feel the same way. I just loved it. I loved working with it. And I'm watching YouTube videos of people using the electric chainsaws, you know, abroad. And it kind of like, it's kind of mouth-watering. You can see how light they are. Like, you can see the guys just like up on the ladder and with big chainsaw, and it's really light.
Yeah.
And I've actually...
They're also quiet, and you don't have to deal with the gas. So all you have to do is...
That's very good.
fix the chain, and you got to have a little borrow with you. And
lubricate the
you
thing.
don't bother anybody. No one knows. I can work first thing in the morning. I don't bother my neighbors. You know.
Do they have the more powerful ones that can split boards and all that?
The one
do they already exist?
I have two Echo models. They have a top handle design and a 12-inch bar. Both of them have a 12-inch bar.
They don't have the big ones yet.
It's not like you're going to take a whole tree down, or at least not a big tree, but it does 99% of what I have to do.
Sure.
I've got a few big trees here that we're looking at. We're going to take all the branches off, and then I'm either going to rent a big chainsaw, or we're going to like build a fire around it or something. I don't know how to get rid of that stuff. I'm going to try to figure out how to get rid of it.
Man, I've been working some wood. I even the video, I think this week's video.
Yeah.
Maybe I gotta make it public. I don't know if it was available already, or maybe I think it was last week. It was available. I started working the wood, man. Don't you think maybe you can work that wood if it's a big tree?
I've got a couple of trees. They're not in great shape, and they're just in the way. You know, I have probably other ones that I could take out and probably use something. Actually, we have one tree that came down last week. We had a crazy windstorm here, like 70 something miles an hour wind, like almost hurricane force winds. And it took out a silky oak, a big Grevillea robusta. And that has a really long straight trunk. I'd love to do something with that wood, but I don't have the tools for it.
That's the thing. I mean,
beautiful
obviously,
wood, by the way.
That's
beautiful
what I heard.
wood.
And I want to check it out, but I just don't have. I need to.
Once you go into it, obviously you're gonna have to, start buying the tools and setting up a whole next shop. But it's really exciting, and it does kind of like match. It's like a brother, like a sister, a cousin, activity to the farming, to the planting agriculture side. Say like that tree behind you there, like I'm dribbling over it. I just want to get my chainsaw and sing all over it.
Well, we've got a few more. Here, let me show you a little more of the backdrop.
That's it, man. That's it. And we're in peace. Anyone who's watching and is want to judge us, we're in peace. For everyone that we bring down, we're planting at least another 100 or another 1,000. So obviously we're in peace, like we're in total peace. And we're planting wood for 100 years, for 40 years, 20 years, 10 years, 5 years. So we're replacing what we're exploring. But obviously, for anyone who's watching who's doubting it, if you're using your table, if you're using your chair, then if you've got the wood, it's part of life, right? So talking about it on the chat, this is something that happened to me. I spoke about it recently in the video, where I've been dependent on external labor to work the wood, professional chainsaw artists and things like that. So that's been very costly in the past, where I've been dependent on these guys and their terms. Sometimes it's a little bit already people talk about as if it's not viable to work wood anymore because of the petrol, costs and things like that, and the maintenance general, and the labor and all of that. When you add it all up, you go out and you buy the wood for cheaper. You go out and you buy the wood for cheaper, for real. You're not gonna have your exclusive how you want it, but you go out and you buy the standard wood for cheaper. So anyway, so this has been a thing where I'm trying to step it up and educate myself on how to work this wood. Obviously, you need to invest in some basic equipment, but I'm really excited about that. Getting the hang of it, doing it myself. Taking that on board, that knowledge, and investing that money I've been investing in the labor, in myself, and in the equipment, so that since we're planting, time will come where every day we're gonna have wood anyway. Time will come where there are already trees that we've planted that I can already make a few things out of. So it's a good time to get involved. And since as well, if you're in the circle and you've got all your friends that are planting lots in agroforestry as well, and you become like not necessarily an expert, but you become handy with the wood, people will partner up with you as well. So it's like, the way I see it, there's always going to be wood available for me. My neighbors, they're already like approaching and they're saying, Ra, bring in your equipment, let's work some wood in my house and things like that. So you always need someone to step up in the woodworking side of things. And we'd love to see them trees you got there, and encourage you to go ahead, man.
Well, this
go
tree
ahead
right
and do
here,
your thing.
This tree gets to stay. This one is actually on the west side of my house, so it shades my house in the afternoon in the summertime. But I've got other ones on my list that are out there. I can see them coming down. And we
That's
have
cool.
I have a Facebook group, the Florida Agroforestry Network, and there's a guy on the group that's been doing much like what you're doing. I think he's got new land and he's been taking down trees, making wood. He's starting to build up that expertise, and I'm hoping to call on him because I can't see myself buying more equipment. I spent this whole year buying equipment, man.
Crazy.
Every month, every dollar I make has been going into equipment this year, and I gotta take a
Well
break.
done, well done. No, well done on that, man.
Equipment is a bottomless pit, man. You can just dive in forever, and like for me, go into equipment stores like going to Disneyland. You know, it's like I look like a young kid around. I want everything. I want to buy the store. Like, how much do you want for the store? And I want the warehouse and everything. I just want to move in here.
I know,
and
right?
live here.
No, and the heart of the farm, the tractor. You guys got some nice tractors. You guys got some nice trucks. You know, and whatever you buy, you know, it's quality stuff. You're gonna last you a long time.
Yeah, and you know, the direction my business is going is that I see that not everyone needs to buy the tractor, or not everyone needs to buy all the equipment. There needs to be someone that can come in and help set up your grove, set up all the, that has all the tools to come in, provide that service, and then let the person take on their new system. And so that's part of what my business model is. So I've had to invest and then reinvest in my truck, my trailer. I've got 2 tractors now, and I've got probably a dozen tractor implements sitting out there, so that I can come and take a raw field like that, like this, and turn it into agroforestry, like what's over there. I don't know if you can see that in the background, but
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. We can.
that's what I see for here is someone has to be the leader. Someone has to make the investment, and it's a service, that's what I'm trying to do.
Because most people don't need to buy the equipment. They don't want to buy the equipment. It doesn't make sense for them to buy the equipment because they'd be using it like once or twice, right? So why do it? So that's the whole point about renting equipment or hiring service.
Yeah, exactly. I obviously as well. I choose, as a user, I choose to rent, right, the tractor when I need it. Right now, I pay the price because I made this big bulky 500 chicken mobile chicken coop.
Oh,
but we don't have a tractor. So like 3 of us pulling it around, and then we're like, you know what, forget it, just park it here, man. Just park it there. One day in the future it's solid, it'll be around for years. So when I get a tractor one day, I can pull it around again or whatever. So I'm actually flipping to the Joey Salatini. Yeah, I'm flipping to his system with his chicken coops, with a 75 chicken coop, 75 birds per chicken coop, with a little bit lighter to pull around. So I'm actually with the wood I'm working now, if I wasn't on holiday now, I'll be working on that right now. So I want to switch to that style chicken coop for egg layering hens. It's not the system that uses it for. They use it for for meat chicken. So it's a little tricky how I'm gonna make the egg boxes inside, and so there's gonna have to be some adaptations.
Maybe why don't you do a fixed chicken coop? It just seems so much easier.
I've got 3 of those.
No, but you gotta build it in the pasture, inside the pasture, right? So that you have easy access to the paddock.
Yeah. Well, this is what I have. My mobile one is fixed in there.
Much easier. Do
you know what happens?
You could use your mobile one as a fixed chicken coop, and then you make fences for the paddocks, just like I used to do.
Felipe, I've got that, but then and they've got access to 6 paddocks, but they're not homogenic. They don't go to the corner of the paddock. Obviously, the size matters, but they don't roam to the quarter. It's about 1,000 meter.
It's got to be. They've got to be smaller. The thing is, chicken they don't go more than 50 meters away from the paddock. That's kind of the limit.
Exactly.
So whenever you're designing a paddock, you just design it to that the last paddock is 50 meters from the chicken coop maximum, you know.
Mhm.
But you don't need such a large area for how many chickens do you have now?
At the moment, I've cut down until I get it right for the winter.
It's like
I got about
400
150 chickens in this system,
Yeah,
other than other
so you
systems.
need
whatever.
like 1,000 square meters is more than enough, you know, for all of the paddocks. So it's just a pretty small area.
Yeah, but there's lots going on here. I do have paddocks further out, and you know, how can I get them to have a positive impact there? Because these paddocks around the fixed chicken coops, they're booming. They're green, dark green. They're really vigorous. Now the paddocks where the chickens didn't go to because of the fixed chicken coop, you know, since it didn't reach those paddocks, say in the north side, they're not well manured. They're not, you know, they haven't been through that process, you know. And once I've got these smaller, I can take them where I want. I can even take them in the corridors of the forest if I choose to. They're gonna be like 3 by 4, 2.5 by 3.5, something like that. You see, I feel a bit more mobile on that. I would like to give it a real go.
Yeah, I think
Sounds
that's
good.
We've got we only have like 6 chickens here. But we do have a mobile coop, and we have a little electric net fence that we use. And so far we haven't put them in the agroforestry. We've been kind of trialing them out and seeing what they do, how much time it takes them to take the whole area down. But I'm into them too. I don't know if we can go as big as you guys. I just don't have time for it, but I think they're awesome in the system. They definitely have a positive impact, but they can definitely have a negative impact. So you have to control, from what I've seen, either you have to have a big mature system or you have to control what they can actually reach, you know.
Oh, it's all a matter of how long they stay in the paddock and how long it takes for them to come back to the same paddock, right? So it's all basically all animal management is about occupation time and rest time for the pasture, right? So for chicken, for chicken and pigs, that's especially important. I mean, cows and buffaloes and sheep and all of the animals, they will have a negative impact if they stay too long. But cows and pigs, they dig, right? So that's the problem. They're gonna eat the roots. Yeah, chicken and pig, they're gonna dig up the soil and they're actually gonna eat the roots and the worms and everything. So they're actually gonna completely destroy the system. So that's why it's very important that they only stay for a day maximum in the paddock. And then this thing about because you were saying, Gennaro, that some of the paddocks they didn't get access to, but that's because you always have to consider the amount of chicken per area. So if you have too large an area and a small number of animals, they're never going to get to all of the area, right? So this is just some mathematical calculations that you have to do. You know, if you have, I don't know how much area we have, like 1 hectare there in that back area. With the
well, no, I mean, where they have access to now is going to be less. It will be about 3,000 square meters roughly.
Right,
but cool. It's not as homogenic. It's not as homogenic as putting them on top of that square 3 by 3. Towards this is for real. This is for real. Obviously, this is for real. What you're saying, and it's the maths of of how many birds per area to make them maximize. They go clean it homogenic and come out, and clean it quick and come out.
Yeah, and not only cleaning it quick, but how much manure they're depositing. That's the big thing actually. How much shit you're putting on the soil with that amount of birds or cows or whatever it is. That's one of the big things about this holistic management of Alan Savory or the Joe Salatin thing or Voisin thing here in Brazil. It's like how much manure you're actually depositing on site because of the high density of animals per area in movement. So that's one of the main things that triggers enriching of this.
So this is the positive, right? Triggers enriching positive. Because it's very quick for us to look at chickens in a system and be afraid of it and know all the damages it does and know how bad it, how much it can kill off the system if done wrongly. But if we talk about the positives, this is a statement and an experience of seeing it. where the chickens were, it's booming. So now I'm at, I'm coming in with the experience and vouching for it, where, it's really green, vigorous, nutritious grass where the chickens were. So I want to make sure that they go, where they didn't, where they haven't been yet. And I want to make sure they're having a positive impact throughout the farm.
Cool. That's the idea. But Matt and Josh, I wanna hear now, moving from another topic to another topic. I want to hear about you guys' partnership, because you guys started this recently, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I'll let just Josh talk too. But so, we've known each other for a few years. He's come and visited me a few times from other parts of the state, and he took on a job out of state. And he called me up one day and said he was leaving that job. And I said, come on over. So I had my eye on him. I think he's a really valuable member of the team. It looks like he's on my left side, but he's really my right-hand man now. And he lives here on the farm. He's been here since July. And we're looking at, I'm going to give him a full-time position and potential for, partnership on a few things. And so I think it's going to be a big move. And I'm really excited to have him, man. I need help so bad. But I'll let Josh kind of describe what he does. He's really filling in a lot of the gaps that I couldn't fill. I could probably do some of it, but I couldn't pay as much attention and do it as thoroughly as what he's doing. But you want to talk about what you do here?
So I do a lot, but I'm really focusing on plant nutrition and plant health. And that's something that I have a lot of interest in. So addressing certain nutrient deficiencies within the system holistically. I recently did a course in California in Korean natural farming, which can just really be shortened to natural farming. It's really focused on working with soil biology and capturing and breeding soil biology and putting it where it needs to go appropriately, and using very specific plant biochemical triggers that and we apply them in very specific ways at very specific times within the plant's life cycle. So that's something I've been super into. And then also just doing general agroforestry work, making chainsaws sing and cutting tons of stuff with machete.
Cool, very cool. Tell us more about this, because I exchanged a couple of messages with you on Instagram. I saw a video you posted about you were fermenting the microorganisms, right? And
Yeah.
it's pretty. I thought it was really cool because I had just gotten back from a course about exactly that, right? About bioactivation of anything, right? Bioactivation of soils, bioactivation of manure, bioactivation of residues from industry. And I think it's very, very similar to what you're doing. So tell us more about the process and what, because we know there's in this biological sphere of agriculture, there are millions of techniques that people will use. And so what exactly are you using? And in terms of biology of like capturing microorganisms, which technique are you using, how you're multiplying them? And also I'd be very interesting to hear about how you join that, like inoculation of microorganisms with minerals in the system. You know, how are you putting them together? Can you tell us a bit more about on practice, how you're doing that on the field?
All right. I'll start with the biology of minerals, and then I'll get into how you actually
all right, cool.
Capture them. So a woman named a person who I'm really interested in is a woman named Elaine Ingham. She's a very intelligent microbiologist and soil scientist. And I've been listening to a handful of other soil scientists, and a lot of them say similar things, that your soil that you have, regardless of its of its texture, whether it's a sand, silt, or clay, or loam, or whatever it may be, has the majority of minerals already in it. And it's whether or not those minerals are actually bioavailable. And I was listening yesterday to a talk about phosphorus. And basically what the person was saying is that phosphorus is, it's completely unnecessary to add phosphorus fertilizer to soil, because there is so much phosphorus in any given soil, but it's just not bioavailable. And these minerals become bioavailable through soil biology. And when you get agricultural land, which a lot of us as agriculturalists are getting agricultural land, it's so far degraded and the soil biology just isn't there. So we think that these nutrients aren't going to become bioavailable, but we need to work with the biology to make them bioavailable. So that's kind of one of the reasons I'm getting into this Korean natural farming thing, is because the guy who I learned from, he said it's 80% working with biology. And then the other 20% is using highly bioavailable plant triggers to induce certain growth.
That's how we love to say it. Like, we're in the business of promoting life in the soil, and the rest is all consequence.
Yeah. And that's why one of the reasons I'm really interested in it is because I think there is a really unique marriage between this Korean natural farming as an input system and agroforestry, because we're doing the same thing. It's just one is more of an input system and one is a growing technique
Management system.
and a management system. So that's something I think is really, really cool. And it's not I've seen a couple people on social media marrying them, but I haven't quite seen it done full on. So that's something I'm really interested in. So to move into the actual technique of doing it, what we're working with indigenous microorganisms, as in microorganisms that are just already on your site in the old growth forests or in the whatever forest systems that you have near your farm. And what you're doing is you're capturing them in basically undercooked rice. And it's a really simple way of doing it. You undercook your rice so it's a little bit like crunchy. So if you ever make rice, you know like what good rice is. And if you've ever been to a party that someone undercooked rice, it's like a little bit crunchy, it like sticks in your teeth. It's not super great. And you're putting that in.
That never happens in Brazil, man. Brazilians are experts on cooking rice.
Yeah.
Nobody ever undercooks it.
Yeah. So.
Oh, but sure, I get it. It's like slightly crunch it right before you.
Yeah. And actually that cooking that rice actually takes a little bit to unlearn how to cook rice, because I cook a lot of rice, and like to unlearn how to cook it and how to undercook it is a little bit.
You had to learn how to cook undercooked rice.
Yeah.
No, but it's not that hard. It's all a matter of the amount of water, right? Because rice is 2 parts water, 1 part rice. You just put 1.5 part water and 1 part rice, and you got an undercooked rice.
Yeah.
But I grew up in the UK. I don't know how to make rice, man.
Yeah, but it's gotta be white rice. Of course, if you're doing whole grain rice, it's different.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys only know how to do fish and chips, man.
Yeah, man.
And drink beer.
Domino's pizza. Whatever, man. Love it. I'm back here. It's all coming back to me.
Oh, coming back. All right. So you got undercooked rice.
And you put that rice in a breathable box. I use cedar wood that has lots of holes in it and space in between the slats. That airflow is super important, because you want to make sure you're capturing a good amount of aerobic versus anaerobic fungi and bacteria.
Uh-huh.
You really want to focus on those aerobic fungi. And you basically put that out. And something I've learned recently is you need to have some sort of hardware cloth, like chicken wire or some sort of metal cloth on top of it. Otherwise, rodents will get into it. So that's a very specific tip that I suggest for people to do. And you let it sit for, depending on the time of year, like this time of year, if I put a box out, it'll be probably closer to 10 days. If it's a wetter time of the year, a warmer time of the year, it'll probably be closer to 5 days. And what you're looking for is a complete colonization of that rice. And when you actually pull back, when you go look at it, all the airspace left in the box, because you basically fill the box 2/3 with undercooked rice, and you leave a third of airspace. All of that airspace should be filled up, and the rice should be completely colonized with those indigenous microorganisms.
Fantastic. So you use like similar to like a bee box, like, because you said it's wooden bee box, similar to something like that, and you got holes on it.
Yeah.
Obviously, you don't put a lid on it. You put the wires.
Mm-hmm. And
Nice.
if you're in the rainy season, having some sort of either tarp that stops rain from getting into the rice itself, because that can cause it to go anaerobic, and then your collection shot. Having some sort of protection over it so it doesn't get rained on is pretty important.
And did you dig up a hole and fit that box into the soil a little bit? Yeah. Or no?
Some people do that, but I don't, not specifically here. Especially
All right, so put it on top of the soil.
Yeah. Well, if you're in the forest and you can find if you pull back some of the leaf litter and you can find like a nice like mycelial mat, you want to set it like on top of that, and then putting some of the mycelium like on top of it too, because you want to create as much opportunity for a really good catchment of microorganisms.
And so that's step one.
And then now multiplication. How do you multiply?
So step 2 is to stabilize it. So you can go to that.
So that process that I was just describing is referred to as IMO 1. And then moving into IMO 2, that's stabilizing it. So you're taking those indigenous microorganisms and you're preserving them. You're essentially putting them to sleep. You're creating something that allows that buys you time for multiple multiplication processes. So you basically, if you have 1 kilo of IMO rice that's been colonized by your IMO, you mix it with 1 kilo of brown sugar. And the osmotic pressure of the brown sugar pulls the water out of the microbes, and it forces them to sporulate. So they essentially sporulate into your rice and brown sugar mixture, and then they go to sleep. They go dormant because there's no more moisture. It's really important to use brown sugar. Some people will say to use molasses, but molasses doesn't have the same osmotic pressure. It basically doesn't have osmotic pressure that brown sugar does. So that brown sugar part is super important because that's what actually pulling the water out of the microorganisms.
All right, because we have several types of brown sugar available in the market. Some are more crystallized, some of them more similar like Demerara sugar. Not these ones. We're talking about the kind of sticky brown sugar, original brown sugar sticky.
As long as it has some mineral, as long as it's not refined sugar, it'd be okay. It could be, what you describe, raw sugar or turbinado, or there's a bunch of different.
All right. Not refined. So the original brown sugar, kind of sticky still.
You can think of the sugar as a type of preservative, just like you would make jams and jellies. You can store them, and they're portable, and you can take them wherever you want to go. Same thing with salt. Salt could be done the same way, but the salt would actually kill a lot of these microbes. So the sugar, it stabilizes them without killing them, and then the minerals are an additive that kind of help with the health of of what you're extracting from the ground.
A crucial detail is Matt's actually been doing this longer than I have. I just have had the opportunity to really dive in. So he knows as much as I do easily.
But there's practice. So he's been practicing it. So
nice.
Cool. So as he said, so there's step 1 is to collect it. Step 2 is to make it portable and stable so you can store it and use it. And then step 3 is to inoculate a medium so you can transfer it. So you want to go into that, you can.
And then
you put it into liquid.
You can liquefy it, which is called liquid IMO, or you can take it to the 3rd step, which is basically putting it into you use a carbohydrate and a carbon, and you breed out the microorganisms like exponentially. And I specifically use rice bran and crimped oats and wood chips. And you take a little dollop of that IMO2, that rice and brown sugar. It's probably about that big, a shot glass. You mix that in water with a couple other inputs, and then you inoculate that medium of the rice bran, crimped oats, and wood chips. And there's a whole process of flipping, making sure it stays under 120 degrees, because it heats up pretty quickly, and you're breeding those microorganisms in that. And then you can take that another step forward to IMO4, which is adding native soil to that IMO3, and that's where you're getting the nematodes, or the beneficial nematodes, the protozoa, and more bacteria, beneficial bacteria, and you're breeding all those out together, and you're creating a soil amendment at that point, a pretty major biological soil amendment at that point.
That's a very, very, very interesting point, and I have a question now then, because one of the techniques that I've learned recently, and which for me it's one that makes the most sense. I think this one that you're describing, it's pretty amazing as well. I didn't know the whole process of it, because people talk a lot about EMs, and the problem EMs, they're cool, but one thing that I never really understood, that sounded kind of contradictory to me, is that EMs, they're mainly anaerobic, and we're going to be pulverizing in the soil, which is, we want it to be like 90% aerobic, the top soil, right? Of course, there are going to be anaerobic pockets, but it's mostly aerobic system. So I always wondered, why am I propagating anaerobic microorganisms to pulverize on my soil? That didn't make much sense. And then this one makes a lot more sense, because you're propagating mainly aerobic microorganisms, right?
Yeah.
But then you're talking about inoculating with soil. So there's this technique which you do not use any sort of bait to capture microorganisms, right? You just get the soil, and you multiply the soil directly. So that would be like going directly into step 4, which is basically getting soil from the forest, mix, and then you can do it either in a solid way to bioactivate composts, or you can do it in liquid way, which involves, I saw a video that you showed that you had like this vessel, I don't know, remember if it was a plastic, how do you call those plastic things where you, 200-liter drums, yeah, the plastic drums, and you were injecting air into the system, right? With a compressor. So basically, this method this guy uses here in Brazil is he gets soil from the forest, and then he mixes. You can have a bunch of different recipes, right? You can mix it with rock phosphate or bone meal if you want to stimulate phosphate solubilizing microorganisms. You can mix it with. He uses a lot of shrimp shells, fish leftovers, just a bunch of different things, and then he multiplies that directly in the drums or in the water tank. But then he just gets the directly the soil from the forest, and what that kind of makes sense to me, because then you're not selecting anything whatsoever, and you're kind of multiplying everything, except of course for the fauna that you're talking about right now, because you're like, when you get soil, you're bringing, like you said, nematodes and all sorts of small animals, which is really important. But are you multiplying them when you add them in this last bit, or you just, because the bacteria and microorganisms, you can actually multiply them and having a pretty concentrated material? But does that happen with these small animals? Is there a technique for you to actually multiply them, or is it just like a small inoculant to start off the system?
The goal with IMO4 is to multiply create a situation that you are multiplying the nematodes and the bacteria and the protozoa. So that's the ultimate goal of it. And recently, I'm actually super excited. I got a microscope so I can start testing my own IMO4s and all these things to make sure that I'm actually doing it correctly. Because previous to now, it's been like feeling, and I'm like, oh, I think it's going the way it should, but now I can for sure take a test sample and look at it under the microscope and say, yeah, I got everything going on that needs to go on in this, which I think is taking it to the next level.
That's awesome. So, yeah, go on.
I have some friends in Costa Rica that are pretty heavy into agroforestry as well. And one of them is a Tico guy. He's, Costa Rican guy. They're called Ticos. And he has a methodology where they do fungal spore mapping, where they have these they put a drop on a paper and it spreads and they can like read. Have you heard of that? I don't know if they do it in Brazil.
Yeah. There's a call. I forgot the name of that thing.
It kind of looks like a map of your eye. It's like kind of a weird.
Yeah, I know what it is. But I forgot the name of that test.
Trying to do is get to the point where you can prove it, because we can't see the microorganisms, at least not very well, unless you have a side-by-side comparison. Here's where we started. Here's where we're at now. You know what I mean? And that's one of the hard things to show, unless you wait a long time and have your trees looking better. But the problem we've joked about it a little bit is, we want to be scientific and we want to have like a side-by-side comparison of a lot of things. But as a farmer, you really just want to apply everything to everything. I don't want to hold back one area of my farm so I can compare. I want to do the whole thing. You know what I mean? So it's almost more beneficial for us to be able to record. We didn't have any fungi, now we do, or we have better spore counts or whatever it is, whatever the metric might be. And that's a big part of it.
These metrics, they're really hard, and they're actually not very well established, right? We've got some metrics that can be used, like people use microbial respiration, microbial carbon, but these are all very generic. They don't say much. And I remember when I was finishing my degree, I was going to do my I don't know how you guys call it there, the kind of like the final work you have to do to present to get your degree. How do you call it?
Dissertation or something like that?
Thesis. Yeah, right. Yeah, thesis is when you get a master's degree, right? Well, whatever. My final work, and I told one of my teachers who was my mentor, and I said, I gotta change my AirPod. I told, look, I want to do it in microbiology, and do you guys hear me well?
Yep.
All right, cool. I want to do it in microbiology. I want to get a well-established agroforestry site, and I want to collect the microorganisms, identify them, and get a nearby site that has never been worked with agroforestry, and also identify the microorganisms and compare it. And it was it was impossible. It was impossible because we were getting. I remember I started looking. I collected samples. I put them in microscope, and then she gave me like tons of books and said, "Look, you got to go through these books to figure out which each microorganism is." And many of these, they're not there. There is no description of the microorganism, so you're not going to be able to discover what it is. What you're trying to do is it's more like a PhD work. You're going to take years to do that. And of course, I had a limited timeline. And then since you're doing it without a limited time, it's just something that you're going to be doing forever. I think this is going to be great. You're going to accumulate a huge amount of knowledge, and you're going to be able to register a bunch of information throughout these next few years. I'm going to be very excited to see that happening. And I hope I get to one day go there and check them out with you, to remember the old times from university. Man. But I think great work, man.
I think the interesting thing too is, like, we were talking about how it relates to agroforestry, and it's really the same end goal. We're trying to improve the quality and quantity of life, right? You know,
Exactly.
and I think what really helps, if you take that barren land example, you know, you're introducing a whole bunch of things, an agroforestry system, and the piece of the puzzle that Joshua was working on is how do we, you know, right now if we put that IMO out in a bare field, it's probably not going to be able to have big of an impact as if you put it into an emerging system. You know what I mean? So part of it too is where do we put it in at the beginning, or do we put it in at the beginning and 6 months later, or do we have to do it continuously, or is there a point where it's inoculated and we've had the great benefit, and then we're just in maintenance mode? And so it is an interesting marriage, and there's I think there's a lot to it. I think for us, part of our goal is not to overcomplicate it, but to get better in general.
Of course.
The one big metric that I've assigned to Josh this year is fruit quality on mango trees. That's something that I will notice because I have my grove right back here, and we didn't take really great notes, but we noticed anthracnose and this and that on some of the trees. And if we notice a significantly less amount, then I will consider that a success. And then it'll be a matter of finding out which parts of that were the successful part and how do we continue that, because, you know, us as consultants and probably you as well, you know, I'm now in talks with some of the largest mango growers in our region. And so if we can start to prove things that really mean something to a farmer, it's not a question anymore. You know, this is serious. You know, this is serious benefit to not only to us nutritionally or to the health of the soil, but to the business as well, which is huge. If you want to take agroforestry out, it's got to be financially viable. And I remember, Felipe, you were talking about that recently, and I really
not only viable. It's not only it's got to be more interesting.
Right.
It's got to be financially more interesting than what they're doing. So that's the big thing.
Yep.
Because if it's viable, but it's slightly viable, they're gonna say, "Oh, fuck that! I'm gonna keep on doing what I'm doing." And I'm gonna
leave Josh for 1 second. I gotta go grab a battery to plug into the phone, but I'll be right back.
All right, cool.
Yeah, the metric thing, it is always going to be a challenge, right? How much of it, because the system is evolving regardless as well, you know, through the agroforestry without bringing in, you know, the IMO. So, you know, with the chop and drop and everything, with, you know, because measuring it from last year to this year, the system evolves, you know, still, regardless of the injected IMO. So your mangoes should get better anyway, should have less disease problems anyway. So it's always going to be so tricky to know where exactly. But, you know, if you've got a recipe that, you know, works, and then, you know, that you're not having any bugs or your fruits tasting marvelous, you know, it's all part of the recipe, isn't it? It's all an addition to the success, to the champion winning recipe.
Yeah.
And the thing that Matt was talking about, how often you're going to use my because what I see people doing with like conventional farming, but conventional farming that's using biological inoculants like IMO. Like, so for example, I know people who are doing monocultures or simple agroforestry systems, and they're using these microorganisms on a regular basis. But it's on a regular basis, you know, they're going to do it. Of course, it depends on the crop, but if you're doing fruit, people are going to do it like 8 times a year, something like they're going to be applying it. For some grains, they're just going to apply it when planting. I visited a sugarcane farm recently. They're applying it probably like 2 times, 3 times throughout the cycle. And what I think that one of the things that agroforestry will do for that is you're probably only going to be able to, you're only going to need to do it throughout the first year, maybe. What I idealize, and I don't have enough data and history of using it to support and say, you know, this is the way to do it. But I imagine that first year, heavy application, like both by inoculating your initial fertilizers, for example, manure, inoculate it, bioactivate it, and use it on the soil. And then we're going to talk a little bit about this method for bioactivating, which for me, it's what makes most sense in terms of composting. But I'm going to talk about that in a bit. And then you inoculate the soil, you pulverize it. Then after you've implemented the system, you probably pulverize it, both the soil and the plant's leaves. Maybe once a month, once every 2 months or something like that, to like 8 to 12 inoculations in the first year, and then gradually reduce it, because then after the system is colonized, you've got enough organic matter on the soil. You've got the soil well rooted. Then that's it. Like the factory is working. You're giving the resources for the factory to work. And then I think of always having something ready to apply, to pulverize, especially on critical moments of the cycle of the plant. For example, when it's about to flower, have something ready, because we know it's a more sensitive moment. If there's anything that happens, a stronger wind or a lack of water, or for whatever reason some nutrient was unavailable for 2 days, because we have to understand that happens. Even if in a well-established system, there are going to be things happening in the environment that are going to be stressful to plants. And then it might so happen that when the plant was flowering, there was a stressful situation, and then you're going to lose 50% of the crop. The plant's not going to be able to do it. And of course, agroforestry reduces that risk, but the risk is always there. It's always about how much of a stressful situation that the environment is going to cause. And then if you have some sort of medicine, right, to give to the plant to just help the plant, how do you say it? Help the plant go through the stressful situation, because it's all about stress in the end. What?
It just boosts their immune system and their ability to cope. And then that's another part of what Josh was explaining was, he explained the microorganism side, but there's also the medicine side in the natural farming course that we've been doing. And it deals with herbal extractions. It deals with vinegar, lactic acid bacteria. There's a whole world of that. And I totally agree. Even with a super healthy system, there's going to be environmental conditions like what I have here. I have extreme fog in the morning for part of the year when the mango trees are flowering. I'm not going to be able to change that completely. And that's going to be a breeding ground for anthracnose or sooty mold or powdery mildew or whatever it may be. And if I can make an application that's going to boost my or my client's ability to produce a crop, of course, we got, and having enough for it that we can do ourselves, that just helps the whole thing.
And it's an application that's not repelling, it's not killing, it's just it's building on its abundance. So it's that we love, because we talk about sprays, we don't like spraying things, but when we say spray, it's generally related to spraying things that repel life, one sort of life or another. And I love to think of sprays in that way of spraying life.
Exactly, spraying life. But I want to talk about that composting technique, which I mentioned, because I've always been, I've never recommended composting in my life, except for I've always said, look, composting is a method for storing resources, right? So if you've got too much resource and you cannot use it, then you compost it. If you can use it directly on the soil, all the better, because you're going to feed the microorganisms in the soil. But then this guy came and talked about bioactivated compost. I was like, wow, that makes sense. Now I can that makes sense, because going all the way to composting until you stabilize it, I was like, nah, that doesn't sound very, very interesting to me. But then this guy comes and said, look, you get your manure or whatever it is, leftovers, whatever you have, get what you have, bioactivated, meaning inoculated with microorganisms, because you got the soil from the forest, or you multiplied your IMO, whatever it is, just bioactivated. Make sure you turn it over a few times, but only for 5 days or 7 days. When the biological activity is at its maximum, then you put it in the soil. And I was like, okay, now that makes complete sense, because then you're multiplying a microbiology that's richer than the one you have in your soil, because you're working in a degraded soil, right? We're talking here about when you're starting a new system, because you're going to be incorporating manure and all of that. So your soil is dead. You're multiplying these microorganisms, you're giving them food. And when the microorganisms activity is at its highest, you incorporate it into the soil and you plant. So what happens, and this is very important, when plants sprout, if they don't have microorganisms ready to colonize their roots, they have to start recruiting, and they spend energy to do that. It's like, okay, the plant sprouts and it sees there's nobody here to help. I need people to help me out. I need this bacteria, I need that fungi. I need people to help me out. There's nobody around. Then she starts releasing carbohydrates to call microorganisms and to kind of stimulate life, because there's nobody around. So they have to start feeding. But the plant only has, like the seed only has so much carbohydrates as a storage. So ideally, we want the plant to spend as little as possible to recruit, because we already planted it into a biological rich environment, and the plant doesn't have to spend energy recruiting, because they're already there, ready to receive the sprouting roots. And this saves up a lot of energy for the plant to actually spend all of the energy in growth. There is a concept in, and it's a concept of conventional agronomy, which I always say there's just so many concepts in conventional agronomy that we should be applying to agroforestry, but I don't see people doing it, because it's not all bad. I think there's many people just look at it as all bad, but there's a lot of knowledge that we can apply. And one of them is this: the bed where you plant your seed or seedling, not the whole bed, but the nest where you plant your seed or seedling, just that small part where you're putting your seed, the fertility of that place should be 4 to 5 times higher than the average fertility of your soil, right? So the exact spot where you plant your seed or you plant your seedling, the fertility should be 4 to 5 times higher than the average fertility of your soil, or the average fertility that crop requires, let's say that. But that doesn't go for minerals alone, because fertility is not only about minerals, it's about biology, it's about soil structure. So you want the place where your seed is sprouting to be richer in minerals. That's why we often apply a little bit of extra manure, of extra rock dust or bone meal on the planting, exactly where you're planting, right close to the seed. But also you want that little spot to be completely colonized with microorganisms, so that this process that I just described happens. So this is a conventional concept, but if we extrapolate it to an agroforestry logic of, okay, fertility is not only about minerals, it's about everything. So we need to have that perfect nest for the plant to sprout, so that it spends no energy whatsoever in recruiting microorganisms, so that it can spend as much as it can in growing, so that it's quickly colonized by mycorrhiza, and then it can expand the roots. And this can make a big difference, because one thing we know is that there's that initial push when plants sprout. Sometimes if it's an annual crop, it's the difference between you having a harvest or not. You know, annual crops, if they lose the initial moment, sometimes they just lose the race. You know, like corn, for example, it's gonna define its productivity when it's producing its 4th leaf. that's 20 days after it sprouts, and it's already defining how much it's going to produce. If it's in a shitty environment, it's just not going to produce so much. So this is pretty cool. So this idea of inoculating it right in the beginning, I love it.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Fantastic.
Then I think the next step too is, depending on the scale, coming up with methods to distribute it and focus it. One of the things that I've invested in this year was a subsoiler, and we have the ability to till and then subsoil. Is there a way that we can drive a tractor and just drop that stuff down the whole subsoil line, or do we need to do little shovelfuls, or how can we, distribute this kind of material that's so valuable and so important right where it needs to be and not scatter cast all over the place? You know what I mean? So that's another whole side of it. Is how do you use it? Once you know how to make it, how do you use it?
It depends if you're doing something solid, then you just need to incorporate it with when you're tilling the soil, right? But one thing that can be done is if you're pulverizing, something liquid. One thing that people do is to inoculate the seeds. This is pretty interesting, right? So
this is what I was thinking about.
Spread the seeds in the liquid, for example, before planting. Of course, there are some logistical problems for that, because the seeds will get wet, and then it's just harder to work with wet seeds, when you're planting. So
I was
something
here
has to
thinking
be
to myself,
thought about.
Things like seedlings, vegetable seedlings, on trays. So you have the liquid next to it, and you dip it into the liquid and plant it, that the little square soil in vegetable seedlings, So I was thinking like we do it sometimes where we do like a mix of rock dust and, put it into some liquid, and we put some minerals or whatever. And we could dip the vegetable seedling into that soil and then plant it. And that kind of just a little dip locally. So something like that as well with vegetable seedlings.
Yeah, for seedlings, it's you can just pulverize it. Like, for example, the last irrigation before planting, so that you don't have the trouble of dipping. Because then you have to be on site with a bucket and all. You pulverize the last irrigation. You do it with the microorganisms, because then you're going to already colonize the leaf, which is also important, and the soil, because then it's going to be embedded in that. So that's a good way to do it with seedlings. But when you're working with seeds, you could easily attach to a subsoiler or to when you're planting. I don't know how you guys are planting, if you're using a planting machine when you're doing seeds, or if you're just broadcasting it manually. But you could just pulverize it after planting with a pulverizer, one of those back pulverizers. That's one thing. Or even with a tractor pulverizer. When I work with larger farms, we just put it in the pulverizer, a bar pulverizer with the tractor, and they just come pulverizing everything. So there's a bunch of ways. It would be cool if you could do it while you are subsoiling, right? So that you can really do one operation.
That's I've been conceptualizing, and I have a couple drawings of a subsoiler IMO injector.
That would be pretty cool.
That's part of the process, developing the technology.
Yeah, and you'll see like a lot of subsoilers, they'll put a tube on the back side of it, so people can lay down. You can use them to lay down, pipe or wire or whatever. That same tube could be used just to dribble that stuff in.
Cool.
With a hopper, like a little tank of fluid up at top, just a little valve.
Yeah. You could also just put somebody sitting on the subsoiler with a pulverizer, like just sitting on the back, like people do with some seedling planters, where people got little chairs in the back, and it could just be someone with a pulverizer there, just spraying it on the subsoil. That works too.
Well, at home, I haven't had the opportunity to do it, to inoculate any of that in my systems. But I have been building up to wanting to do it, and when I think I will, it's not locally like you guys are developing, but I'm thinking just in the horse bedding, where I collect, for covering the soil, the shredded wood with all the horse manure. If I can inoculate, the barns, and then even things like chicken bedding. So in my house, we're enriching the material through the animals, and if at that stage, if I can inoculate it there, is what I'm thinking. That because you got to be practical, you got to so the process is obviously. I mean, you guys take it to the next level, level 4, and then next thing you're making up level 5. And on a beginner level, I'm thinking, inoculate the barns, and that's going to be pretty cool as well.
Yeah, and that's
And
kind
good
of
for the animals as well.
Your system would be kind of a similar thing where you're inoculating. The animals are doing it for you.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And the guy who came up with Korean natural farming, he does have animal systems. So litter systems that are associated with breeding indigenous microorganisms. It's something I haven't really gotten into yet, but seeing as you mentioned it, I think it'd be something super cool for you to look into.
Oh, fantastic, man! I will do.
You can reduce a lot of diseases and pests also in animals, animal barns and all that. And you can pulverize it on the animal also. People will do that. They'll pulverize on the animal, the animal's body just to help. For example, for chicken, it can really help with lice and those little small lice that stay
like
here in Brazil, we call it pichilica, and which can really infest chicken's nest. So that can help out a lot because and the interesting thing about this is that you can also, for example, if you've got a specific problem with a certain pest or disease some time of the year, so you can one thing that you can do with these microorganisms multiplication is to start kind of skewing the material where you are multiplying to a material which will give an advantage to a certain microorganism. So, for example, if you want to, there are a bunch of fungi that kill beetles, right? Like beetles and all of their associates. So if you get a bunch of cockroaches or beetles, or people use also fish scraps, which have a lot of how do you call that name of that substance that beetles chitin? Is that chitin? Yeah. So if you put a lot of that material inside the propagating material, then you're going to give an advantage to that sort of microorganism. So you could be multiplying a lot of that, and that can be applied to your field to help out with any problem that you might have at some time of the year. So it's like it's still a diverse system, but you're kind of increasing the population of one specific microorganism that you want maybe to do some control on a specific organism which might be causing damage to your system.
What about for animal feed, for the flora in the stomach and things like that? And you think, feed that rice to the chicken? It will be different bacteria.
Some people do
so
that.
They can... Right. So that's what I'm asking.
In the process of making lactobacillus, you're essentially making cheese. So you can take the curd when the curd separates from the lactobacillus whey. You can take that curd and you feed it to your chickens, and it's like an inoculation to your birds. And it's really good for them.
I've fermented chicken feed always, right? I would only give fermented chicken feed to my chicken, but I would just do it wildly. I would always get I'd have the system of buckets. I would put the chicken feed, fill it up with water, and let it ferment for 3 days. And this worked marvelously. I had no problem whatsoever of diseases. It will ferment naturally in a good way, so it gets that good smell even without inoculating it. And it was conventional feed. It was just feed that I was buying from the supplier, and I would just always put it completely immersed in water, let it sit for 3 days, drain it, feed it to the chicken, and it's impressive. It's impressive.
As you drain it, some of the nutrients get washed out.
They absolutely love it. No, but then you give it. Then I would get this.
Feed
this
the water.
liquid. Exactly. You can add to the water. But they would eat it like crazy. It was like popcorn to them or something like that. They would go berserk on that.
Crazy.
Honestly, man, they would become wild. And there's the advantage when it's wet. There's a lot less leftovers because they just get like the chunks. It doesn't spread because they lose a lot of feed when the feed is too dry because they're pecking it and then it spills all over the place. So this is also very interesting, especially for monogastric animals like chicken and pigs who don't have a fermentation chamber in their bellies like cows do.
Yeah, and I wonder, it's kind of like people talk about microgreens and sprouted grains for human consumption. I wonder if maybe there's a reason why they like it. They like a sprouted seed better than they would like a dormant seed or something like that. Maybe there's more nutrients available when it starts to germinate.
Oh yeah, because the thing is the nutrients are already broken down once the seed germinates, right? Because once the seed germinates, it starts using enzymes to break down all the complex molecules to simpler molecules. So it's easier. You get, instead of getting whole proteins, maybe you get amino acids, you get simpler sugars, you just get a more they're already half digested basically.
Oh, so I just thought of something. So part of one of the main ingredients that we use in our natural farming is alcohol. We do an alcohol tincture extraction from certain herbs. And we've been thinking about how to make our own alcohol, and we grow a fair amount of sugarcane here. And so we've been thinking about making a big batch of cachaça or something similar, which I know you guys probably know a lot more about. And we were thinking about using some of our IMO or something because we don't have we haven't invested in like a brewer's yeast or any kind of yeast. I'm wondering what that would do, having an alcohol to make your extractions that was based on that as well. And I haven't tried it. I don't know anything about making alcohol.
There's a book by an American author called Alcohol Can Be a Gas. It's this permaculture guy. It's a big book. The book is about, he says, look, we're just stupid of using gasoline. We should be using alcohol. Alcohol should be the fuel that we use.
Yeah.
And so it's a huge book. He talks a lot about the why it should be the benefits of alcohol, but he talks about how to build also an alcohol distillery, and he talks about how to change your gasoline fueled engines to alcohol fuel engines, which is apparently pretty cheap. This is something I still want to do one day, to get a chainsaw and kind of fix it to run it on alcohol, because I also dream of having a small alcohol plant to fuel engines and vehicles and all that. So this is a book you could look for. Alcohol Can Be a Gas. It's a good read.
Well, that sounds great.
Yeah, it's a really cool book.
How many roads you travel getting into this stuff, man?
It's crazy. But basically, the only difference between producing alcohol and producing cachaça, for example, is you have this alcohol tower, right? So it's the same equipment, but then you have the alcohol tower, which will distill it so that it goes to like 97% alcohol or something, because cachaça is like 41%. So that's
we got that going on at home. It's just conventional.
Yeah, Gennaro has a cachaça.
Yeah, we got the distillery
industry.
We've started. We'll build the physical, room for it. We've got the equipment in, and in 2022 we're gonna start distilling that cane to make the cachaça original. Well, I haven't got all the information, but we will as the year goes on. We're gonna start doing all the tests, and we can talk about it.
That'd be awesome. I think, for me specifically locally, I think sugarcane has a lot of potential. Producing cane, we're looking at making vinegar and then also some kind of distilling. It grows like gangbusters here, so it makes sense for us. We've got big sugar in the middle of the state, but for actual home use, I think people could be using it a lot better. And it's a great, I think it's a great agroforestry plan. I'm curious to hear if or how you guys use it in agroforestry, or do you incorporate it?
I mean, in the system, we see people, hard to find people that are brave enough to go ahead and do it. But if you were to plant it and shred that cane into the system, that's it's a treat to all the life, so to the flora of the soil. So it is a treat, that sugar, and then you got to work out how you actually shredding it, because if you don't break it up, it becomes a little bit, maybe Felipe can talk about it, to break it down. If you shred it and then you've helped them out, maybe you're targeting different organisms if you shred it, or if you don't, whatever. I mean, to plant it like we do with the elephant grass, in line at the edges, but then how do you shred it on the spot? Because it's not like a chop and drop thing. If you don't shred it, I think it's a different information. But it is bliss. Like if I've incorporated to the material that you got to mulch, something like that. If you shred it, incorporate it to your mulching material. Yeah. We haven't seen people be brave enough because of the labor, and the kind of strata and the time it takes in the system. But we're definitely looking forward. We are aware that it's very beneficial.
To me, it behaves really, really like a beefy Napier grass. It's like the same thing, just bigger, thicker.
Yeah, but the Napier grass, we cut the leaves, and that's really easy for that to decompose and things like that. Whether with the cane, it doesn't decompose in the same rate, and maybe it's different fungi that decomposes it. So who are we targeting and things like that, So there's these issues. And on that note, I've been visiting some old areas of the farm where in the past we had the cane, and we're always kind of worried about the cane as in the Napier grass cane. And we're kind of always concerned about, is this going to swallow? Is it not? Is it this and that? And then, we've established that, with the shade, and then, it shades out and all of that. We're not so scared of using the Napier grass. As the system evolves, it disappears. But I've been walking around and I found just off one cane and off one this, and I've been seeing some elephant grass cane that look like sugar cane, real thick stuff. Just as the system has evolved, 5-6 years later, the quality of the soil, and I've been seeing these things that I've never seen before anywhere. These elephant grasses in advanced systems that have just sprouted one on the off, it's not like dominant or nothing. And it's looking chunky, like some chunky sugar cane. It's like some abandoned systems. You go back there and then you're getting some chunky results on some of these, primary plants that we use in the early stages. We never see them really because, they move on from that stage. You move on to the different stages of the forest, and then, that's not available anymore at that stage. But if you get that off one plant, you see how much impact that soil, can have, like, how it evolves and everything like that. I've seen some beefy elephant grass canes now.
Are you saying they're coming up more as a single or a double stalk from a clump? Or are you just saying it's one clump that's just really beefy in general?
A single, one stalk, just a one-off, just managed, or, just really, really shallow, not dense, nothing like that. But just a one beefy, like looking like bamboo thing. I was impressed.
Yeah, sugarcane is amazing. I confess I have a hard time seeing it as a service crop, as a practical service crop. If it's there mainly for biomass production, I don't think it's the most efficient. But when you want it as a produce, if you want to actually process it, then it becomes amazing. Because the problem I see it with it as a service crop, it's like bamboo. Like bamboo would be amazing to have as a biomass producer, but it's impossible, man. It just takes up way too much space. And sugarcane, for you to actually reap all the benefits that it has, you need to allow it to grow to a certain height so that it actually expresses its maximum potential. Because if you're cutting it short so that it doesn't shade out other stuff, you're pretty much throwing away the potential it has. So then it's a lot better to have a Mombasa, for example, which it doesn't produce as much biomass when you compare potentials. But if you compare a sugarcane that you cut before its proper time and a Mombasa, which you can allow to grow it to its full potential, I don't think it's gonna make a big difference. And then sugarcane needs like a rest between cuts of at least a year so that it produces a lot. But then it grows really big. It shades out bananas, and it's a bit of a mess. But then when you have it as a main crop or as a secondary crop or whatever, then you can have, I imagine, spacing out rows of trees a bit more, because sugarcane is actually kind of a medium stratum plant. It really tolerates some shade, especially if you have trees on top which lose the leaves, or if you're pruning them.
Mm-hmm.
So you can easily have a system where you've got rows spaced out maybe a bit more, like 8 meters, 12 meters or something like that. And then you're growing it there in between, and you're cutting it, processing it, taking all that juice out, bringing back the material. Then you're in heaven. And even for conventional farming, in monoculture today, since in places where they already have a bit more technological advances in the sugarcane industry, people don't burn it anymore, because before they would burn it and bring 200 people to harvest it. But nowadays they've got the machines that harvest it. So the machine comes, cuts the top off, leaves it on the soil,
Mm-hmm.
already cuts down the bits, the cuttings,
Okay.
cuts the cuttings, and takes it to the industry. And then they bring back all of the leftovers from the industry to the field. So you create a huge amount of organic matter, even in conventional systems, in monoculture systems. When you have that in an agroforestry system, then you can just go to the heavens. The problem for smaller systems is the labor for cutting, because it's a lot of work, right? To cut it if you don't have the machine that harvests it.
And for smaller systems, I remember, never forget Ernest talking about it. The level of care and love, that your sugarcane deserves or appreciates, in comparison to what we think it deserves, it appreciates. We think it's quite rustic and, with water and the minerals, and that's cool. But he's talking about, coming in and pruning, cleaning it up, kind of like lifting the skirt, like the banana, you get those old dry leaves sometimes, or something like flapping around at the bottom base, some leftover material. We're talking about the potential of the boom, but thinning it out a bit, taking a few clumps out, and managing it. I've seen Enish come in and it's just a clump, and it looked like just an ordinary clump, and after a few minutes it actually looked healthy and beautiful through the management. It looked like nicely. It's not like a pruning where they cut the top or anything, but just to remove some of the dry leaves, thinning it out a little bit, one or two canes that might be popping out somewhere where it might be going into the corridor, anything like that. So that kind of love, it does appreciate it. And sometimes we just, it's rustic, leave it there. But that would have to be small scale.
That's the sort of management that you can do in a small scale. But as soon as you have a larger scale, that's just impossible.
That's the thing.
You need someone the whole day there taking out.
Yeah. So what I'm saying, I mean, if you've got your small scale and you want to love for it, it does appreciate it. I mean, sugarcane is also a plant that appreciates that personal love and care. But obviously,
there's two things with the sugarcane that you guys would probably be kind of interested in. I have a friend that he farms sugarcane. That's his primary crop. And There's two tractor implements that he's invested in. One is a stripper, and it's got basically 4 big string trimmers on the back, and it lifts all the dried leaves off the 2 sides as you drive through the corridor, and it removes all that. So it does lift that skirt, like you said. And the other is after the harvest, he has something that cuts at or below the surface. It cuts everything off as a full reset. And the reason is because it's like banana. It's really like bananas. You want that new sprout. You don't want it coming up off the side where it's going to be kind of tippy. You want it coming out ground strong from the base. And it really is like it's little management, and it's figuring out the tools to take it to a new scale and a new level. But here on a small scale, sorry, go ahead.
I'm wondering how does this one takes out the dead leaves, because I mean the rows are very narrow for you to go in with a tractor, right?
So
how does it work?
From Thailand, and this is how they manage their sugarcane in Thailand. They plant about 2 meters apart their rows of sugarcane, and they use an arrow
pretty far apart.
And it's an implement that goes off the back. There's 2 high and 2 low, and they have long strings, and they'll spin real fast off the PTO. And as they're driving through it, it actually lifts and flips them up. And you can make it go different directions, but because it has 2 different shafts, you can make it go backwards or forwards, and it'll either shred them down or lift them up depending on the age of the cane. And you just drive right down the corridor, and it hits both sides. You go down to the next row, go down to the next row. And the way he's developing his site is, his initial planting, which is his cash flow, is sugarcane, and it's mostly for juicing. And now he's got contracts for another distillery. But after about 3 or 4 years, which is kind of what he determines to be useful life of a sugarcane, is about 4 years, he'll go in and take out every 3rd or 4th row and establish a tree row. And he could have done that from the beginning, but this is the way he's developed his farm, because we're all learning as we go. But now he's finding value in having a tree line, every 4 feet. So when the cane's finally gone, it comes out of the system, it gets mulched down, and he moves on to the next stage of his system. But those,
that's beautiful, man.
Are narrow.
Do you know the name of that implement? I'd like to.
What's that?
Do you know the name of the implement that cleans up the sugarcane?
Cane stripper. I could ask him about who manufactures it, because he had to special order it from Thailand. His wife is from Thailand, so that's how he got connected with it.
Yeah, I found it. That's exactly a sugarcane. But I found manual ones. Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, you want one that's a PTO powered one. The one he has is PTO, and it's got 4 strings, and you can put different length strings depending on whether they're reaching the canes or not.
Yeah, I'm gonna research it later. I can imagine that attached to a motorcycle. That would be kind of cool, man. Imagine like this guy on a motorcycle, all protected with equipment, so he doesn't get burned from the exactly. And just there and
so his dream is a robot tractor, like an electric robotic tractor that runs the track. He's been putting a lot of ideas into my head about it, but I think he's way ahead of me on it. He wants a machine that has a track that it knows, and it goes, and he wants to be able to spray with it. He wants to be able to strip cane. And then I don't know if he'll ever get to be able to harvest it that way, but that would be the ultimate is if you could harvest it. He's looking at a way to cut and gather clumps of it and then take it out, to load it to a trailer and stuff like that.
Cool. That's pretty cool, man.
I know you guys in Brazil, maybe it's different, but here, there's the sugar industry, and then there's this whole other sub industry of juicing cane, which is really valuable here. And I think there's a lot of potential. People are only barely understanding the benefits of like fresh sugarcane juice. And then there's all these artisanal distilleries that are coming into the state, and they want new product. They don't want what's coming from big sugar. You know what I mean?
All right, check it out, man.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yep.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh yeah.
And then look what's landing in the middle.
It doesn't seem to be moving by a tractor. It seems to be. Oh no, there's a little tractor there.
It's a really narrow tractor that squeezes in there.
Probably a rototiller, a small rototiller can can pull this. Oh no, but it needs a PTO, right? It needs a PTO.
This one does.
Well,
yeah,
but you could have an engine attached to it if that's the case.
yeah. And
you've got two levels, right? This is cool.
Yeah, it has a high and a low, which you can remove the strings too. So if you know, if you're beating up the tops of your cane because they're still young, you can just run the bottoms. You know, or if the cane's really tall and you're not doing anything at the base, you can just run the tops, or you can run the whole thing. And you can change the length of the string depending on how it's, you know, how it's hitting the cane. But the idea there is you gotta kind of have your planting dialed in pretty well.
Nice. Pretty interesting.
But the other thing we were talking about getting burned, you know, my buddy was looking at like, what's the narrowest cab tractor that I can buy, you know, so he can be in air conditioning with the music on, driving through the cane and getting his work done without, you know, just nightmare of bugs and spiders and burn and, you know, everything else that happens in a cane field.
Exactly. Probably something, you know, one thing that I see, which I think will still be developed more, is quadricycles, which I don't know if you guys, what?
We call them four-wheelers here. Is that what you're talking about?
Four-wheelers. Yeah, four-wheelers.
Four wheels. Yeah,
exactly. So here in Brazil, people have started using that. For me, that's the future tractor for the small farmer. And I think it's just it's not going to be very long before we've got ones with cabin and air conditioning and music inside. And they're pretty strong, right? The ones that we have here in Brazil, they're 20 horsepower. That's enough. They're probably going to make some more powerful ones soon, but that's already enough for a small subsoiler. You know, if you can have like a one how do you call it? One tooth, one pin, one whatever subsoiler.
Yeah. One
shank.
Yeah, like a ripper shank. They call them shanks.
Yeah, right. Yeah, shank. All right. So one shank subsoiler, and the thing is that they don't have PTO, right? But it's probably not easy to make one with a PTO. Actually, I think some of them do, because there's Honda is making one, which is specifically for agriculture. Are people using those over there in the States for agriculture?
We have a different type of vehicle that's like a side-by-side. It's like a two-seater version of what you're saying that people use a lot. They'll have beds that can dump. They'll have a tow hitch so you can drag any kind of implement that has its own power or doesn't need power. I haven't seen them with
I've seen like a four-wheeler with a PTO.
You have?
I've only seen one though.
Yeah, so it's not common.
Yeah, I think the four-wheelers are a great option, and I believe they're going to be developed more into agriculture, and we're going to have more and more implements because they're small, they're very agile, they're very useful because you can use it for transportation. You can walk around the farm with it. It's fast. It can go into any terrain. It's very, you can maneuver in small areas. So, you know, for small farmers, you can put them inside the sugarcane row easily because it's small. Yeah. I know people use it a lot for electrical fencing. They've got these things in the back so that you can put in the rolls of electric wire, and so it's an amazing tool.
They're popular. I love it. Platform for spraying too, mostly for spraying herbicide, but you could use it to go spray the grove too. You have a little tank mounted on the front of the back and a wand, and you just as you're going through, or you could have and everything else.
We've got a couple of questions, not questions, but more like comments here on YouTube. Dan said we need a soil, when we were talking about the microorganisms. He said we need a soil biology AI that has a microscope for an eye that identifies, classifies, and tracks life in samples. Yeah, that's the dream, man. Oh, man. We should send an email to Elon Musk and say, hey, Elon, can you ship us 3 million so that we can develop this thing? 3 million. I mean, it's like a change. He paid 20 billion in taxes this year, something like that. And then also said, seems like a walk behind tractor would be a good narrower base. I don't know I think he was talking about the sugarcane thing. And Mr. Disco Hippo ask, what's your guys' favorite bioaccumulator? Do you guys have a favorite bioaccumulator?
I guess it depends on what the definition of the term is. Does that just mean biomass?
I think he's talking about biomass producer, which species.
You got a favorite?
If I had to narrow it down to three, I went 1, 2, 3 in my brain. I really like Tithonia, the Bolivian sunflower, the Mexican sunflower. I really like Tipuana-Tipu.
Tipuana, I don't know what that is.
Everywhere I plant them, they just they just grow and they handle cut really, really well. And they're pretty easy to work with. I really like Albizia Lebec too.
Albizia is cool.
For me, I like the Corymbia that we use, the Corymbia turleana, which is like our eucalyptus, basically. And I don't know. I really like pasture, just straight up pasture grass to be able to cut and rake. I'm starting to appreciate that more than anything. I'm just trying to understand how to use it to the best of my ability. I do agree Tithonia is a great one. You just gotta you have to be brave and just cut it all the way down. That's what I've learned. Don't halfway cut it down. Cut it all the way down. That's my personal pro tip. Go just cut that sucker all the way. Don't be shy.
Exactly.
I see people do it, this much out of the ground all the time, and you're just creating your own. Cut it down.
Yeah, cut it real low. Otherwise, you get those clumps that left over in years to come. I find it even dangerous for animals and people because it can become quite thick and quite hard if you leave that point around.
Yeah.
Really cut it down, cut it low. Nice.
Yep. We tested.
What about your favorite one, Gennaro?
What to inoculate
Produce biomass. Biomass.
Yeah, man. So, I mean, eucalyptus and bananas. To be honest, I love the Mexican sunflowers and things like that, but I use it more for animal feed. And I love the grasses. I work so heavily with grasses and Mexican sunflowers, but all of that I explore for the animal feed. So it doesn't become a chop and drop material for me, even though I'm heavily producing this. So my alternative is bananas and eucalyptus, right? The bananas for the irrigation factor as well. So it's just, consolidating that. And the eucalyptus, just the power. Wow. Now obviously the Mexican sunflower is the most powerful, but I'd love to be, having an implement where I could just shred that Mexican sunflower, and that would be even so sweeter. That's the dream. Where you make it viable, where you kind of do it on the spot. But I harvest so much of it, and it's all animal feed, so it returns as manure. All of that stuff returns as manure, the grass and the sunflower. But so it's bananas and eucalyptus are my main partners on that. And then not necessarily for mulching, but for covering the soil initially, the jack beans is also a favorite at home.
Yeah, jack beans are amazing. Yeah, I don't really have favorites because it really depends on. I mean, I'm gonna have a bunch of favorites, but it really depends on the type of system, right? And where you are, what climate, and all that. All of these that you guys mentioned are definitely some of the most important ones. To the trees, I would add Senecio mea, right? That's the yellow acacia, which is just unbelievable. That tree is just impressive. How do you call Azidaracta indica? Let me find out. That one for dry regions as a medium. Oh, you call it neem, just like we do.
Oh,
Yeah. Or China. We have
Yeah,
China
that-
similar.
Well, Felipe,
Yeah,
you've
but then China berry, that's an emergent species. It is great. It's amazing. For dry regions, neem is a little bit better in my opinion. Well, it is a medium stratum plant. That doesn't make it better, but I'm just to differentiate it from China berry. And it's evergreen, which for dry areas, that's a big plus. Since one of the challenges in dry regions is to maintain the system green throughout more times of the year, right? Because in the tropical rainforest, it's easy, everything is going to be green all the time. But then in dry areas, it's one of the focus that we need to have. So neem is just impressive, and it needs very little water. And then of course, I'm going to talk about dry lands because I've been working a lot there. So obviously prickly pear.
I was about to say,
great
because
biomass.
you've inspired a lot of
accumulator.
people. You've inspired a lot of people to work with the prickly pears. My new
Yeah, there you
sugarcane
go.
system with prickly pears every 30 centimeters.
There you
So
go.
I was waiting for you to bring it up.
That's too much, man. You got to have it at 10 centimeters. Now the last video I published, it's not available yet, but I think it's going to be, I don't know, it should be available this week, isn't it? The video I
we would have
published.
released it today, but we've got this live, so we'll hold it for next week.
All right, so we're going to release it next week. It's already available for our patrons, but next week we're going to make it available for the public, which is I was giving this course in the semi-arid of Brazil, and it was one system focused on pasture. So it was rows of trees every 7.5 meters with pasture in between. And the rows of trees were heavily colonized with prickly pear. And then one system for prickly pear production, right? So it was rows of trees with prickly pear in the middle. And then we got another cactus here in Brazil, which is called mandacaru. The genus is cereus, right? It's like this big cactus.
Yeah.
You know it? Yeah.
I think
so there you go.
The fruit apple cactus.
Apple cactus.
It makes a red fruit. It's kind of a tall colander one.
Exactly. And that one is even more resistant to drought than prickly pear. So it is what saves farmers in the Northeast when everything goes to the toilet, because it's 3 years of drought. They start getting these cactus, they burn the pricks off, and they feed it to the cattle. But nobody plants them, which is quite amusing, which is like, why don't you plant something that saves you on the hardest time? And this is something kind of counterintuitive. So we're trying to stimulate farmers to plant this apple cactus. Is that how you call it? Apple cactus? Cool.
That's one of the names.
Yeah, so these one are pretty important, I'd say. And then so the fast growing ones, grasses they're just the kings, or the queens. There's nothing to be said about that, because they're just impressive, man. Which other plant are you able to cut more than 4 times a year? And in ideal conditions, you're going to cut it 8 times a year. It's like there's no other plant that does that. And they're green throughout the whole time. They have very dense leaf coverage. So this is pretty cool. And then also one thing that I think it's important to remember, one thing that came to my attention is that we talk a lot about fast growing trees, kind of pioneer and secondary species, but climax species, like long living species, these ones produce a lot of biomass. I don't think people talk a lot about that in agroforestry, because most systems didn't get to that point yet. So people are kind of stuck in the eucalyptus, in the ingas, in the China berry, because they're fast growing.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know what kind of long living trees you've got over there. Obviously the oaks are one. But here in Brazil, we've got a bunch of emergent long living species, which will only start producing organic matter after 10 to 12 years. But boy, when they get there, they are monsters. Really, really monsters in producing organic matter. And at least it seems to me that the quality improves as well. So for example, one tree that I published a few videos about is the stinky feet, right? Himenia cubaril, we call it jatobá in Portuguese.
Yeah.
It's an emergent species, and the quality of organic matter is just different than eucalyptus or China berry. I don't know exactly how to say it, but it's different. And I noticed in the soil, because there was this one tree in the system that was already there when I started, and I just started pruning it, right? It's already kind of big, but it doesn't even produce fruit yet. And the soil underneath just became something different. You know, the leaves are
Similar
different,
to,
the stems are different. It's pretty amazing.
I see that in the cashew tree quality leaves. The quality of the material of the cashew tree is also on
It's
another
impressive.
level. And
Yeah,
not
jackfruit
necessarily
as well.
climax trees, not necessarily climate, yes, jackfruit. And we're moving into the avocados, which is also as a main crop, is not like a climax tree like you described it, but now I can replace my eucalyptus with my avocados. I can take that seriously. It is an organic matter producer. When you do prune, it does produce. So
exactly,
yeah,
a
so
lot.
you do substitute. We are talking about eucalyptus, but with time, as time goes, 5-6 years already, I'm seeing very few eucalyptuses where the avocados have established themselves.
And I think this has a lot to do with probably mineral content, but also carbon to nitrogen ratio. I think all of these trees, they have a lower carbon to nitrogen ratio. And Ernest talks a lot about this, right? As your system progresses and it's richer, the carbon to nitrogen ratio of the system as a whole, of the soil and of the plants, it will gradually diminish, right? And the idea is that it kind of stabilizes it at between 8-to-1 and 10-to-1. That would be like a rich system would probably have a carbon to nitrogen ratio in the soil at that area. And I think that it's not only in the soil, but also on the plants. So these plants, they have a different carbon to nitrogen ratio that just becomes something else, when it decomposes. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think here
Then
sorry, Reece, go ahead.
No, go on.
I was going to say, in terms of climax here, we're in a hurricane zone, so anything that gets to a certain height eventually gets
dies.
chopped down pretty well. There are a couple of exceptions. One being the Australian pine, which is casuarina?
Oh, casuarina. I love that one as well.
Another one would be what we call the Java plum, or jambulan, or jamun.
Yeah, that one is also amazing.
That one,
love the fruit.
Here, it has a time of year where it drops leaves, and it
drops leaves over there.
What's that?
But it doesn't become bare.
No, it doesn't. It's just pushing off
it
the
just
old.
Throws up. All right, cool.
It has a canopy. Usually in the dry season. But one thing I noticed about all the trees we just mentioned was that they have glossier leaves than I don't know if your eucalyptus has glossy leaves, but ours has fuzzy leaves. I'm wondering if there's something about that.
It depends on the one. There's some that have glossier leaves, some that don't. Well, usually these leaves, they are, if the plant's producing more lipids and depositing on the leaves, this just makes it a lot less sensitive to wind, to insects, to drought, to everything. It's just a more resistant. It's even one of the characteristics, for example, if you want to select more resistant tomatoes varieties, you're going to look for the ones that have glossier leaves, the ones that have more hair on the leaves. This all makes for more resistant varieties, even inside the same species. And this is something that also, even in the same variety, the plant could be producing more or less lipids. It could be producing more or less trichomes, depending on the amount of resources it has available. So the richer the system, the more you can expect that to happen, you know, and even variations inside the same species, inside the same variety of species. You know, so this is pretty interesting.
And lipid is basically fat, right?
Exactly.
So that's
fat.
Fat composed of more nitrogen, or is that a more nitrogenous material?
Not necessarily, because nitrogen is mainly linked to protein, right? Because protein is you can there's a direct relationship between nitrogen and protein, which I think it's like 6 to 1. Like 1 kilo of nitrogen can produce 6 or 6.2 kilos of protein, or something like that. But it's more about the plant having everything it needs, because a lot of these lipids are not essential to plant growth. Of course, some of it is, but there's a lot of secondary metabolism of the plants that will produce lipids. And so for the plant to start investing in this, it needs to have everything in order, right? Because there is a hierarchy. Just for ourselves, you have a hierarchy of priorities. You know, if you're hunger, you're not going to spend time creating poetry, right? You're gonna go after eating something, you know. So like feeding, reproducing, this is like very basic. But if once you have this settled, then you can start thinking about creating poetry, music,
philosophy.
other things. Exactly.
I think it was you, Felipe. Maybe it was another video I watched. You were talking. Somebody was talking about cows, and they should be basically being full by the middle of the day and then just chilling the rest of the day. You know what I mean? They've already got everything they need, and then they can go and get some medicine off some of the trees or whatever. It sounds kind of like the same thing. You know, if they're getting enough nutrition, they have time for other things, you know?
Exactly. That's a very good point. And for cows,
No.
I don't think I said that, but that's a good point. And for cows, there's a lot that will impact that, right? Because if you think that they take a lot. I mean, animals that eat grass, they take a lot of time to fulfill their nutritional needs, right? Because they need a lot of volume. So even the height of the grass, people talk about how much a cow can get with one bite, or it's not exactly technically it's not a bite, right? Because they get it with their tongue. But how much grass can it get with one mouthful? How much is that? And the more they manage to get, the faster they're going to be able to fill up the belly. So there's just a bunch of environmental factors which can affect that. And the same for plants, right? How much can the plant get at a given time? And that's going to depend on nutrient concentration, organic matter, soil, biological activity, temperature. If temperature of the leaf is too high, photosynthesis stop. If photosynthesis stop, the plant will just stop its metabolism. So there's a bunch of things that will impact that.
On the climax situation, you got that beautiful tree behind you with the hurricane. So, you know, there's hope. You know, there's a living proof that it can happen. And it strikes to me a little bit like, you know, I love the trees that grow naturally, you know, that you did, the ones that you didn't plant, the ones that the seed fell and, you know, it chose to grow there. You know, these are probably the ones that you're going to, you know, eventually have that will survive a hurricane or anything like that. So I love to have, like, you know, all the trees, seed banks around, you know, depositing and, you know, really betting on these ones that have, you know, so where we're always mostly focusing on systems that we've designed and for scale and this, you know, and organize it, systemize it. But, you know, for these climax trees and maybe the ones that will survive, maybe they're the ones that the odd ones that grew spontaneously, right? You know, in the high density of seeds that fell from the tree and through the selection that, you know, the ones that survived. And then, so I really treasure the ones that, you know, when the trees are sprouting that, you know, just happen naturally. I really kind of treasure that and, you know, give it a little bit of love and care and make sure that one, you know, as you know, as one that I really believe in. So sometimes we plant something from a seedling, but just enough so that it can, bear seeds, so it can be, the mother to others, that will grow through the natural. Because, often we do say, if we're talking about forest, we don't plant forest. We plant, a consortium of trees and in a system that, replicates, the principles of the forest and things like that. But, we're a little part of that plant in the forest. We prepare the soil so that animals and so that, the nature can do the work. So I think when we talk about forest, what all we're doing is preparing the soil so that forest can grow here eventually. Our consortiums of trees is not exactly a forest, like as a proper, a natural forest, let's say. So I love to think of it as well as we're giving conditions so that the forest can then come. And, these little things that grow, they're the ones that maybe you got a good chance maybe in the future, survive a hurricane, because you got that beautiful tree behind you. So eventually.
Yeah, and this tree is adapted for it. There's other trees in the property where the whole canopy's been snapped out and it just regrew. It just got pruned by nature. That's fine.
No, good luck. It's easy to say from here. Good luck on that. We'd love to follow that.
I wanna go back a bit, rewind a bit when we were talking about the IMOs. I was gonna ask something to you guys, and we ended up moving to a different subject. Like because Josh, we were talking about minerals and making it available to plants. Like, are you doing any with the IMO, with the application of microorganisms? Are you doing any mineral supplementation in the beginning with specific nutrients, micronutrients? Are you aligning that with soil samples and leaf and sap analysis or something of the sort to address minor details that might lack in some specific moment until you establish that microbiology well, so that it doesn't need those amendments anymore?
Yeah, so when I first got here, we put out a bunch of azomite, which is essentially a rock dust.
All right.
It doesn't have high concentrations of anything specific, but it had basically the terminology they use. It has like the A to Z of minerals. It's a really good product. It's one that I really like. And then we also put out some langbonite, which is more or less potassium, sulfur, and manganese. And then we put out chicken manure applications, and then we've done calcium and sulfur.
What source of calcium are you using?
Gypsum.
Oh, cool.
Because the soil pH here is around 7.8, so we don't want you can't
apply lime.
Yeah, we don't want to buy lime for it.
Yep. So we used the sulfur to try to adjust, and then we added the calcium. And then now in our applications, we are addressing some micronutrient.
Yeah, there's the bananas specifically kind of have a boron thing, an issue with boron. So we're doing small applications of boron and a highly bioavailable calcium foliar spray.
But is calcium a problem there?
It is.
It's a problem partially because my pH is too high. And then also through the soil analysis that we did, it's low here. It's low for us.
What about, because on such a high pH, I imagine the biggest, for example, over here, we've got very low pH and very acidic soil. So the main problems are very low calcium, very low magnesium, and phosphorus is completely unavailable. And in that sense that it is there, mycorrhiza can get it, but it's not soluble until you get that thing going. But what about iron, manganese, zinc, and copper, which usually get very unavailable when you have such high pH, like 7.8. Do you have problems with that, with those micronutrients?
I can't say I've seen specific issues with it yet. But I am curious on doing a leaf sap analysis soon to see if that is an issue. I have been listening to some talks on certain YouTube channels that talk about zinc being super important, but I haven't necessarily seen a reason to apply that yet.
Cool.
The langbonite, I'm pretty sure it's the langbonite, did have a certain amount of manganese in it. So that if that was an issue, that conceptually addressed it. But a lot of properties around here that used to be in citrus, which I think at some point this property was in citrus.
Most likely.
They were spraying. There's actually like a copper buildup in the soil, and I think
that happens a lot.
On the soil test that we did, the copper was.
It was there.
It was there.
Yep. And then the iron. There's iron in the water. I think part of that depends on what you're growing. I know there's a few things that people recommend chelated iron for, but I don't know if we're growing those, or I'm not aware of an issue with it yet. But that may be something.
That's good. That's good. No need to address the problem if there is no problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's basic. But I find it amusing how different it is, right? You guys are working on 7.8 pH. I've never ever seen a soil like that. Over here we used to working. I usually get soils between 4 and 4.8. That's the most common situation that I find here when starting new fields. And yeah, so it's a completely different situation. Very, very interesting.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it's the same everywhere and all year, because when we did the sampling, we did it from our mature beds, and we did it, was it during the rainy season, or it was kind of in the middle of the rainy season? So I'm wondering, we're going to do new sampling this year, probably soon, of out in the pasture during the dry season, and also probably a separate sample that's from our mature soil beds, and see, is that pH just kind of spiking or changing based on, the hydration of the soil and based on the age of what, I think we need more information, because I wasn't expecting it to be that high at all. I was expecting it to be pretty neutral or slightly acidic, and it wasn't. And that was surprising to me.
At 7.8, it's pretty high.
Mm-hmm.
Very good for I call that thing that you eat, the flower that loves a high pH in English.
Artichoke?
Artichoke. Yeah, that's it. Artichoke. One of the plants that love
Mouth-watering stuff.
In Florida, we have a lot of those Mediterranean crops. They can grow, but because we're so humid, they essentially rot on the plant when you
they mold.
Yeah. So that's our constant thing. Is
it's like dates.
Yeah, dates are a major one. Dates can fruit well here, but they just rot on the tree.
Yeah, that's a pity. That's a pity. Dates are so good. I love dates. That's something people should be planting more over here in Brazil and in the Northeast.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
I'd
love to see that if you guys can share the soil results with me. I'd love to see it. I have this online course here in Portuguese, which is specifically for soil preparation and fertilization for agroforestry. And I like to bring a lot of a variety of soil samples for people to understand the huge variety of soils that we have. So I'd love to, if you guys can share with me, to show to people because it's a completely different situation than we usually encounter here in Brazil. That would be pretty cool.
We would love that. We would love the feedback and the input. Is there anything, because we're going to be sending the soil samples out soon, is there anything specific that you would want to maybe add to a standard test, or that you'd be looking for?
Well, I usually ask for the basic sample, the basic analysis, right? Which is like macronutrients, organic matter, and CEC, aluminum, all of that, plus texture, micronutrients. And we have this, I don't know how you guys call it in English, but here in Brazil we call it remaining phosphorus. Do you guys have anything that's called remaining phosphorus there?
I know what you're talking about. I can't remember the terminology right now, though.
Right, but this is something that will the test is they put it they extract the phosphorus, then they put something that mimics clay, which will bind phosphorus, and they see how much it stays in the solution, because that's to measure how much phosphorus binding there is. And it kind of substitutes texture for many of the calculations that we do for gypsum, for how much gypsum to apply, how much phosphate you're going to apply. So this is something that I've been trying to recently, actually, I've been trying to always ask when I send soil samples to analysis. But that's, and it's also interesting to find if phosphorus is a problem in your soil, to ask for the total phosphorus, because this is something also that you can order, right? Because they usually send you available phosphorus, and you can ask for total phosphorus, which is very important for us when we work with microorganisms, because that can be made available for plants. So that's pretty interesting.
So I might just send you the link to where we order the samples from, and maybe you can help us pick all the of which one to do.
All right, cool. I'll do that.
Insight on that kind of stuff. That would be really great.
Cool. I'll do that. That's going to be pretty cool. I'd love to see. It's kind of also a challenge for me, to get such a different soil and try to understand, what's best to do, because here in Brazil, it's somewhat straightforward because I'm very used to it. So, I know that there's like 90% of chance that we're going to apply a little bit of lime with some rock dust, just the idea is to supply calcium and magnesium, because I've seen soils here, which is just, it's unbelievable. There is no calcium and no magnesium at all. I've seen soils with 80% of aluminum saturation. It's something of another world. It's just impossible for plants to grow. But then when you have such high pH, you probably don't have aluminum problems. And like, what sort of problems you're going to encounter? My take on fertilization is, because we want always to trigger processes, right? And there is I find that there is a balance between how much minerals you're using and you're adding to the soil, and triggering process, because if you add too much minerals, you inhibit process. But also, if your soil is completely depleted and your plants cannot access minerals, then you also don't trigger processes. So it's all about finding that fine balance. I need to apply so much just to kickstart the system, so that plants can start activating and working with microorganisms. So it's like, how much should I apply to kickstart the system without making the system, how do you call it? There's a word for that. Without spoiling the system. That's the word. Just like you spoil a kid, you can spoil the system, because the system, everything is available, so we don't need to work. And then you inhibit microorganisms instead of encouraging them to work. So that's cool.
I was listening to a talk yesterday, quite literally, about that, where they were talking about if you put out like muriate of potash.
If you put out what?
Muriate of potash. It's a really high potassium fertilizer.
We use here, what people use here in Brazil, potassium chloride. Is that this muriate potash?
Yeah, muriate of potash. I can't remember I think it might actually be potassium chloride. I don't think it's potassium sulfate. Yeah,
potassium sulfur is less damaging usually.
Yeah. you can actually create a situation where the plant no longer seeks to work with the soil biology that makes potassium bioavailable.
Exactly.
Because you're just feeding this plant water soluble potassium, and it's just
Exactly.
sucking up the straw. So it's just getting fat and happy and not working with the soil biology anymore.
That's exactly it. Because the thing is that plants hire microorganisms, right? They're giving away carbohydrates for microorganisms. It's an exchange.
Yeah.
And if they don't need microorganisms to do that, then they're not going to pay, right? But the thing is that the beautiful thing is that microorganisms making nutrients available is one role, but then there's a bunch of other things that they will do, like protecting plants, maintaining biodiversity,
Structuring
soil, producing plant hormones. And so if you inhibit that, that's a big problem.
Mm-hmm.
And potassium, just like phosphorus, there's huge deposits, or there's a huge quantity in the soil because it's in between the clay particles, like between and as the clay expands and contracts, you can have more or less potassium. I heard a talk of this guy. It was in you guys know John Kemp, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I heard one of his interviews.
Yeah, I've been listening to a lot of John Kemp lately.
Yeah, I love him. He's really cool. He was interviewing. I don't know the name. Don't remember the name of the guy he was interviewing, but the guy was. He said he did an experiment, and I think it was for over 20 years, if I'm not wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And they measured two different plots. One they were applying potassium every year. The other one they were not applying at all.
Mm-hmm.
And the soil where they were not applying potassium would grow the potassium availability year after year. And where they were applying, it would diminish the potassium availability year after year. So that's very contradictory, but it just goes to show the idea. So yeah.
I want to propose or ask something to you guys, or whoever's watching out there. Is you guys want to do this more often? And if so, can people comment and ask questions and kind of give us a root or a thumbs up or what? I would love to be able to interact like this more often, man.
Yeah, you know,
definitely, man. I'm definitely
from our end, Matthew. This is what. So it's a general feeling, right? It's great to catch up. We all get ideas from each other, and I hope it's not another whole year, but until we meet again. So we can try and make it, more often for sure. We can even, people in your channel, people on our channel, they can leave their questions, because sometimes the people on our channel, maybe they have a link where they can interact with you guys as well, you know what I mean? And vice versa, or whatever. So
yeah, I left your guys
definitely things to be done.
Description of the video. Josh, I don't know that you have a YouTube channel. Do you?
I don't. Not at the
All
moment.
right. So I linked to your Instagram, and I linked to Matt's YouTube channel. So if people who are watching, you should definitely check out
What's Ripening.
What's Ripening YouTube.
Yeah.
I want to create a catchphrase like that, because that's way too good, man. I usually just say in my video, "What's up, YouTube?" But that's just very phony. I need something. Yeah, but you can't keep it pruned is cool, but you can't start a video with keep it pruned.
Yeah, that's more the ending. That's you gotta keep
it
pruned.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the ending.
But for starting, What's Ripening is really good. Pete Canaries has a good one. How does he start it?
So what's growing on?
Yeah.
Yeah, what's going on? That's it.
You can. You can use mine. You can use that one. There's no trademark there, so use whatever.
Cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. I remember when we first saw the What's Ripening channel a few years back. We had these cool guys in Florida, man. These cool guys, they're growing mangoes, and it looked like you've got your family around you. It was really nice to see you guys. It's always been. So it's really cool, man. We're definitely up for doing it more often.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm up for doing it like 30 days from now, if you guys want. no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for me it works. I have so much more to say. Other topics, because we went into life biology. I'm all into the animal feed, and we spoke about, you know, bringing up our experiences in 2021. And, you know, I went through a lot where we were forced into developing technology. So a bit of like how the crisis, different types of crisis, forces you into developing this technology for solutions, natural solutions. So this is very much the feeling of 2021 for me. And it's great because once you accomplish and you take steps and you evolve things, it's a great fulfilling sensation, right? So there's so much more that we've got to catch up on. So yeah, 30 days sounds about right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's schedule that. So let me open the calendar here. We could do it on, do you guys have a preferred day of the week or whatever?
I can't open my calendar because I'm using my phone right now, but we can.
No, but is there like a usual day that is it better during the weekend or during the week, or it doesn't really matter?
One thing that we've kind of started doing is Friday is our spray day when we do our sprays on the trees. So we kind of are always home on Fridays, if that could work, but we could do it other days too.
Janelle's got the kids on Friday?
No, Friday I don't, but I feel like on a Saturday, you know, for the viewers, I don't know. Saturday is a problem for me because there's Arsenal football going on, Arsenal games, and that
certainly it's not the whole day.
Yeah, I know. But what I'm saying is, still, I think Saturdays is my feeling is the right day for the viewers as well. So you know, it comes out on a Saturday. People have got a Sunday to watch it as well. People want to watch it live. You know, Saturday and Sunday. You know, for the people.
Right.
That's fine with me.
We should also do every now and then. We should do it these talks while we drink cachaça to make it more fun.
Yeah.
The old agroforestry talk.
Or some might be toasting a little bit of herb. Whatever, man. Whatever. That's deep.
We should, Janar, you have to start working your Alambiki with JJ so that we have the Agroforestry Academy cachaça.
Yeah, definitely.
And then ship it to them so that we're all drinking
everyone can be vibing.
Cachaça. That would be
everyone can be vibing on our organic produce. Yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
We need a special coffee too, depending on the time of day. Special.
I love it.
Exactly.
I brought some coffee over to the UK. It's like I can't live without it. Certain amount of kilos. I brought it all over with me, man. I can't live without it. We're addicted to that for sure.
All right, so check it out. How about we can leave it? We can confirm it maybe a couple of weeks from now. But on the 29th of it's a Saturday, and we can see about that. Maybe we'll in 2 weeks we're going to confirm it to see if that works. Otherwise we'll slightly change it. And also this time it didn't happen, but we can spread the word out a bit more. Today I just mentioned it to our patrons. I released it in my personal Instagram account, but that's not very efficient because most of my followers are Brazilian, so I don't know how many of them speak English. But we can start, letting people know in YouTube and all that, so that we get more people in tune for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'd be cool.
All right, guys. So it's midday here. It's time to grab some lunch. And
so Arsenal game is about to start. Surely everyone around the world is hyped about the Arsenal game. You guys, surely
everyone and all 7
surely all around the world.
They're all waiting for that.
Now, all around the world, people are, they're talking about it right now, and
it's not crazy. It's not Flamengo, man. It's not Flamengo.
It's Arsenal Football Club, man.
It's like 10% of Flamengo.
Well, you'd be surprised.
Yeah,
It's crazy. It's crazy. You know,
Under the video, we'll be talking about that, I'm sure.
this is like Brazilian meets UK, like we're Arsenal football fan, and here and out in the UK and out in Brazil is crazy. So I'm just a bit of a mix, man. There's no for it. Have to love it. Guys, it's
All
been
right,
a pleasure,
guys,
man.
cool.
Love to see it.
People in YouTube, thank you for watching. And hopefully this is going to happen more often. I hope you guys enjoy it. Matt, Josh, it's been a pleasure. And I mean, we've gone for two hours and 20 minutes, and that's almost Joe Rogan worthy.
Yeah.
So,
We're in podcast
that's
territory
impressive.
now.
Yeah, it's impressive.
All right.
So we'll talk soon, guys.
All right,
Cheers.
I want to hear the sign out though from you guys.
Yeah,
All
from
right,
the Agroforestry Academy crew, keep it pruned.
Oh yeah, we're signing out. Cheers, everyone.
All right.
Take care, mate. Nice one. Till next time.
How do I end? I gotta end it. Yeah, there you go.